All right, good evening. My name is Attorney Vincent Davis, and this is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. I'm joined this evening by some very special guests. Number one, Miss Georgette Truen. Uh, we also have Cassandra, and it looks like we have a new guest I haven't met before. Is it Nico Boyd?
Yes, sir.
How are you, Nico?
I'm doing great.
Good. What state and county are you in?
So I live in Illinois, but the case was out of San Diego.
Oh, San Diego. We have
Yes.
several cases in San Diego. Is your case closed or it's still going on?
No, it's actually just closed 30 days ago. I had gotten my parental rights reinstated. I think I called and talked to you a couple months ago, and you gave me the recommendation on the attorney that I went with, but I ended up only needing the attorney for about 2 weeks, and then the case was closed, jurisdiction terminated, child was home after 30 days after I got my parental rights reinstated.
Good, very good. So you are a person whose rights were terminated, but then they were reinstated.
After
And I,
5 years.
yeah, after 5 years. Wow. You know, I get a lot of questions from people. Hey, my parental rights were terminated. Can they ever be reinstated? And I guess the answer is, Miss Boyd,
Yes.
Yes.
very good. Now, for all of those that are watching this evening on the different social media platforms that we are streaming to, here is a person that had their parental rights terminated and then got them reinstated after 5 years. I bet you that if you ever ask any attorney that practices in this area or says they practice in this area, they will tell you that that can't happen. And here we have living proof. Miss Boyd, why don't you tell us something about your case and how you got to where you are today?
Well, I had a child when I was 16. She lived with my mother until my mother passed in 2014. She went to another family member that lived in San Diego. We learned of assaults that had happened during her time after my mother had passed. And so from there, behaviors became too much, and those relatives were instructed to put her into CPS care instead of sending her back to me, which we were prepared to do. And then once she was in the care of the state, I didn't know any better, really, like so many others. And I believed what they had to say when they said that they couldn't transfer her back to Illinois, where all of the family lived besides this one relative. And they told me that they couldn't help with the reunification costs because I wasn't a California resident. So I would have to pay to go and see my child. And that just wasn't very possible coming from years of homelessness at that time. And it wasn't something that was in the cards that I could even dream of doing at that time. And then they told me, since at that point she was stuck in California, I was pretty much told that adoption was the best route, and the only way to do that would be to sign over my rights or to stop contact. And after hearing my child at that age, she was about 7, 8, and hearing her cry that she wants to get out and she wants to leave, and from like what I've been told, like at that point in time, that my only option was to allow her to be adopted so she could leave the group home and kind of go into other placements. And at that point, I was really naive to like everything. And that was in 2015. And then I stopped contact. I kept in contact twice with that social worker to just the progress on like what was going on. In the last contact I had, the social worker had said that she had just picked a new name and they only had one more court date. I was never called when that court date fell through and the adoption fell through. She had 2 failed adoptions altogether in the 8 years total she was in care. In last year in February, I found out through just getting a random picture from one of my relatives, dated for 2018, that adoption never happened and she was still in care. And I pretty much just called the hotline, got a hold of the social worker, and called them every single day for 2 weeks, and left a voicemail every day until I annoyed them enough to get a call back. And then from there, within 2 weeks, I got to see her over Zoom for the first time. That was up to foster mom that she was with at that time. And then foster mom did something amazing and had me come out there within 30 days of like reuniting with my daughter, and I got to stay in the home with her. And it was just kind of a mix up of understandings of like what was supposed to happen. And but I got to stay with her for the first week, and she no longer has her license, unfortunately, due to the decisions that were made. But I'm very grateful for those decisions at the end of the day. And I know that was just like God's blessing, as like that was how the cards were supposed to be. And to me, that was the biggest miracle, because she had over 20 placements, hundreds of hospitalizations, dozens of AWOLs, like needed negotiators towards the end of the case, to get her down from roofs, like tons of sexual assault. Like this poor girl's been through it all, and she's 14 now. Um, and just I was really big on advocating and doing everything that I possibly could from the day I found out. And then I had to go through her in a sense, and they made it very difficult, as in like I wasn't supposed to like get her hopes up, as they said, and like talk about, things. Since she was over the age of 12, she had to be the one to initiate the reinstatement of my parental rights. And so like I had to kind of walk a fine line, and I ended up paying for 3 trips out to California altogether. And earlier this year, I went for 2.5 weeks with my 3 toddlers, currently age almost 2, almost 3, and 4. And we drove out there so all the siblings could meet, and I was able to have her for a full week unsupervised. And it all went really, really quick. And then we had court, and I got my parental rights reinstated in July. And then I got paperwork for the approval of the group home. And there was a lot of problems prior that I had met with HR for the group home during my visit out there and everything. And they had cleared a lot of house at the group home. And I think just like knowing like where I was digging my heels in, and like how much work I was really putting in, even though like I was a single mom of already 3 kids, like, but all the work that I had put in since I got sober. And like it was just kind of like I feel like I overwhelmed them with such information that like they like scrambled, and like being out of state, they didn't know what to do. And so that's when I started contacting your office, and you had mentioned that the cost of the transportation and things like that would kind of be out of my range of what I'd be able to do. So you gave me a recommendation, and I went with that. And he was my attorney for a couple of weeks, and then I asked to file, when I got the STRTP placement packet, I asked to basically go against that and say that I didn't feel that was a safe placement for her. And so we did that, and then we also mixed in the 388 with that. And during my lawyer didn't put in to terminate jurisdiction or place with me, just because it wasn't a realistic thing to ask for at that point in time. And the social worker wasn't putting it in the paperwork. But it's one of those things where God really moved in an amazing way in that 2.5 hours where everybody was deliberating and talking with each other. And prior to the hearing, getting to see us interact, and like just all of the players of the game, like all right there, and getting to talk in real time, and like seeing things move. And by the time we were talking about a 30-day visit in Illinois, and the social worker wanted to do that, but it was, it came a hindrance on like her being able to um, like monitor the child every 30 days and like see the child every 30 days. And so it kind of got to the point where she wanted to do it, but in order to keep school and services and not be behind on her duties, they just terminated jurisdiction like that day and placed the child with me. And there was nothing. Like they sent the very next day I flew back, the following day they flew her out, and they've been mailing all her belongings since. Um, and there's been like, she came with 12 days worth of medication, and in so many documentations they said that she could be a threat to herself or others without it, but we had to go 9 days without it. So like there's a whole slew of things that I just, it's one thing after another. Like I feel like I'm making it through, but they didn't like necessarily put the pieces together for success, and like they say like they're supposed to. Like I know that there was some complications per se as far as the distance goes, but I think that there could have been like a little bit more done had that like actually been their mission, considering that within 30 days prior the child had already been hospitalized, been on the roof 3 times, gone AWOL numerous times, and needed a negotiator, but you only send a child with 12 days of meds and no insurance, no services. Like,
An amazing story. Um, so I have a bunch of questions to ask you, but I'm going to defer to Cassandra and then to Georgette, and then I'll ask the questions that I have. So, Cassandra, you have any questions for Nico?
I do that every time. But I was just going to tell you, like, that's amazing. That, like, it blows my mind because, like, I'm going through a lot of stuff with trying to get my kids back with, and they're older and they're going through so much. And it gives me hope to see your story, which is like really amazing. I don't really have any questions because it's not like the same kind of situation, but I'm just like, I'm so happy for you. And I really appreciate you coming on here and telling your story because it gives everybody hope. It does.
thank you.
Georgette, you have questions?
What advice would you give mothers dealing with um, something similar to your situation?
I would say like I'm a single mom and I had 3 toddlers at the time I did all the services I did. But right now, especially, like there's so many services available that you can do virtually from home. And I would say just like anything and everything in your community or in your state that you could possibly do that could be any kind of like gold star on, like, I call it my CPS resume. And like um just like building that up, and the more stuff that you can put on there, like I would say like it's definitely not going to hurt.
Thank you so much, baby girl, for sharing your story. Um, you really, like Cassandra said, you give women hope because some women lose hope and they just want to give up. And I keep encouraging them not to give up. And Mr. Davis always says there's always hope. But unfortunately, some attorneys will tell parents all the time there is no hope, and I get those calls a lot. And when I tell them there is a hope, and they don't believe it, they don't believe there is hope. But I'm so glad that you came on the show
Yeah, I
today.
was when I first met her and I got to go out to when I first met her for the first time, I called I think about 30 or 35 attorneys in that week, and none of them said that they could do anything because I didn't even have as much of a case number even to go off of. So there was nothing I could really do at that point.
Thank God that you have them back, and that's all that matters at this point. And I pray to God that they recover all the trauma they had to face in the custody of a demonic entity. Um, that basically they just use the kids for money. That's pretty much it. Um, but I am very thankful to God that you have them back.
And
I'm glad.
kudos for listening. Kudos for listening to Mr. Davis and taking his recommendation, because a lot of people don't listen and don't pay attention to that. And I want to give you a thumbs up for that one, because
And that's
we hear Georgette talking about that problem all the time. Nobody listens to their lawyer, or nobody listens to the people that they're actually trying to give them help. And you listened, you took his advice, and that's perfect.
that is perfect. And a lot of oftentimes, you know, Cassandra, I think I shared that on my shows with you as well. When they take the advice of Attorney Davis, they call me and they say, "Well, it doesn't make sense. What he's telling me makes no sense." And I'm like, just do what he says. He knows what he's doing. But oftentimes I get people saying, I don't think I should be doing that. And then they lose the case, right? And then they say, oh, well, I should have listened to Attorney Davis. I should have done it his way. But oftentimes people are so stubborn, they want to do it their way. And I am so glad and I'm so thankful to God that it somebody like you can actually be on the show to express how you feel and what happened in your case. And, you know, I'm very happy for you, Nico. Very, very happy for you.
I'm pretty sure Mr. Davis says strategy. He has a strategy.
People don't
That's what it's
understand
all about, is
strategy.
strategy. And if you don't listen to him, no matter if it sounds crazy or not, it's a strategy.
It's a
All
strategy.
attorneys have strategies.
You guys think I understand him? And I work for him. I work for Mr. Davis. But his logic is so completely different than mine because I'm not, he's pro. Like he's number one attorney in my eyes. But again, the strategy is very important. Very important. You're absolutely right.
Okay, Nico, I have questions for you. Some of them are questions for our audience. Some of them are selfish questions for me that I just want to know about. Because you and or your child have a significant legal claim lawsuit against the county and perhaps some social workers. Whether you want to or your daughter wants to pursue those, that's a whole nother conversation. But when you had this child and they started this CPS case in San Diego County, how old were you?
Um, I would have been, I think, 25 at that point in time because the child was 7,
Okay.
8. Yeah.
That answers a lot of the other questions I had. I thought that you were a minor
I
because
was
you
a
had.
minor when I gave birth.
I see. Okay, I got it. All right. Now, you kind of glossed over this in your story, but it caught my attention. Did you say that your child, while she was in foster care and group homes, was sexually abused?
Yes.
When the social worker finally agreed to, or the judge finally ordered the child to be placed back in Illinois, you said that they didn't do anything for you or for the child. They just kind of like whisked you away, goodbye, get out of here. You're now Illinois' problem. You're not San Diego, California's problem.
Yes.
Is your child still on medication?
Yes.
Yeah.
The
Does she
school
have?
helped me pay the school here helped pay the first out of pocket cost that we had to incur because I had to take that first full week off of work and everything to even to start to get some of the services set up. And we had no birth certificate or no social security card or anything. They had a photo of the birth certificate, but no social security card, which caused a lot of problems getting insurance at first.
All right. For those that are just joining on some of the social media platforms, Nico is a woman who lost her parental rights in a CPS case. 5 years goes by and her rights are reinstated. The child is given back to her. She moved out of state, so she's in Illinois, and the case is closed. So when people tell you there's never any chance, that's not necessarily true. not necessarily true. I can tell you about a case that I won on appeal many years ago, and everyone, my colleagues, laughed at me for trying to win a particular case, and then laughed even more when I did the appeal. And then one day I get a call, a telephone call from a colleague who says, congratulations. I have no idea what he's talking about because I had actually forgotten that the case was still pending, an appeal. It was one of those things that wasn't at the top of my mind. I'm just waiting for the Court of Appeals to make a decision. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, that case, and he says the case, and he says, you won. And I go, I won? How do you know? Because I didn't receive anything in the mail. He says, I've been following that case, and the opinion was issued today, this morning. And you got a reversal. And it was in a case, as I recall, I was representing a relative who wanted the child placed with them, or wanted the child actually back and placed with him. And I can tell you that most of my colleagues told me that there was no way that I was going to win. And I bet, Nico, people told you there's no way that you're ever going to win. You said you talked to how many attorneys and they told you that you didn't have a chance?
Just in the first week, I spoke to 35.
We should probably get a shout out to the attorney who finally did help you, right? And you said I recommended you to that person. Who was that person?
Arthur Laciento.
Arthur J. Lasalento.
Sorry, I probably said that wrong.
A fine attorney. He's been on my shows, periodically, and that reminds me I should call him up and have him back on the show. But yes, and I'm glad that he was able to help you and you were able to get your child back. Tell me something, out of all of this time that you've been in this battle, what are the top 3 lessons you learned as a parent that you could tell our audience?
What was the question again? Sorry.
What are the top 3 things that you learned that you could tell our audience?
Documentation is probably going to be your number one best friend. To literally, I literally put my heart and soul into every waking extra second I had into. If I was watching one of your YouTube videos while I was at work, or if it was doing actual research and writing up things at home and making lists about what I needed to do the next day, literally just nonstop. It was when I lived and breathed until it was finished. And then just that, keeping yourself centered, giving yourself, even if it is just once a month, that you actually allow yourself to do that, but at some point, allowing yourself to regularly have some sort of break where you actually just forget about what's happening for an hour or 2 hours, or the night, or whatever it might be, to watch a movie or anything to just let your mind unwind for a minute. Those are probably the top 3 things that I would recommend to stay sane and keep fighting.
I was trying to think, have I ever met anyone in my 35 years of being a lawyer that had their parental rights reinstated? And in 35 years, you're the second person that I've met that this has happened to. And I bet that it could happen a lot more. But you know what happens after your parental rights are terminated? People tell you there's no way. And so most people go on with life and forget about that child. In this particular case, you didn't forget about the child. And just from my own experience, and a lot of people hate to acknowledge this, there are a lot of failed adoptions, and troubled adoptions. It's almost like we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. You know, adoption by foster parents is such a great idea on paper, but we forget about the dynamic of the individual, the dynamic of the family, the dynamic of biology. I firmly believe 50, 60 years from now, we're going to look back on the way these courts and this system is set up, and we're going to say, boy, we sure were, primitive in how we handled child abuse cases. Many years ago, Governor Schwarzenegger, when he first became governor, had got a lot of pressure from his constituency to do an investigation on CPS. Because in the old days, CPS mainly, at least in Southern California, affected Black and brown people. And then there was a crossover, to white families, to middle class families. And Schwarzenegger commissioned what's the Hoover Commission to investigate CPS in the system. And I thought that their report was going to come back and cause a lot of changes in the way the laws were written, at least in California. Unfortunately, the only thing that was important to me was a recognition by the Hoover Commission that the way CPS is set up, it's set up with financial incentives of keeping the family apart, not financial incentives of bringing them back together. Now, everyone has their opinion about why that is. My opinion is money. It's easily justified to ask for money when you are, quote unquote, taking kids away, having to keep them safe, and providing reunification services. And then on top of all of that, the slap in the face is the bonuses they offer and the tax incentives they offer the foster parent when they decide to, adopt little Johnny. When I first started doing dependency, they didn't have the 366.26 TPR statute. They had something completely different. And it was very difficult, or a lot more difficult, to terminate a person's parental rights. So the name of the game back then was legal guardianship. Who was going to force grandma to adopt the grandchild and make the grandchild her son or daughter? Sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? Why can't grandma just keep the kid, raise the kid? And, the kid has biological parents. Maybe one day they'll get themselves together, maybe not. And all of that went away for a statutory favoritism to terminate parental rights and let these kids be adopted by grandma. At one time in California, this is not the law now, but I see remnants of it. At one time, if you were a grandparent or any person and you said, hey, I don't want to adopt little Johnny, the social worker would move the kid from your home, even if the kid was there for a long period of time. And then there were a lot of legal battles about, well, what's really best for the child versus what's really best for the agency, CPS, and making that money, right? Now the law has changed, and you're not supposed to be able to do that to a person that says, oh, I don't want to adopt. I just want to be, what they used to have was long-term foster care or the legal guardian of the child, right? But I still see pressure in that. I have people tell me maybe once a week, the grandparents said that they have to adopt my son because if they don't, the social worker said they were going to move the child. Well, that's against the law right now. And that's why I say it's the old remnants. And of course, if you ever put the social worker on the stand, it's likely, in my experience, that they're going to say, I never told the grandparent that. Must have misunderstood me, right? And since they don't tape or videotape or wear body cameras, who knows what that was said? There's a reason why police wear body cameras, right? Rodney King. In the old days, Rodney King, he slept and, fell on the pavement. But somebody had a video camera and videotaped everything. I am a big proponent of social workers having to videotape and audio tape interviews that they do in the course of their job. Interviewing witnesses, interviewing children, interviewing, parents, because that will, I guess, fix a lot of the he said, she said BS, right? And, you could tell me something right now and I could put a little twist on it and turn the whole meaning upside down. Maybe I heard it wrong. Maybe I wrote it down wrong by mistake. Maybe I wrote it down on purpose incorrectly. Who knows? Right? But it affects so many people's rights as parents. I read today someplace, I forgot what state it is, but they brought a multi-party lawsuit against CPS. I think it was someplace in Denver. A multi-party lawsuit against CPS for basically stealing children and lying about it. Detaining children and lying about it, causing some of these parents to lose their child permanently. Now, when I saw that, I thought to myself, oh, I've heard that before. I thought to myself, oh, I've been involved in that, in cases where that happens. And unfortunately, there's only going to be one thing that's going to change all this. And that is if people vote to change the laws and vote to put in family-friendly judges, vote to put in supervisors who require, of these different counties in California, that require their social workers to be family-friendly and family reunite. Will that ever happen? I don't know. Hasn't happened in the 35 years I've been a lawyer. As a matter of fact, it's gotten worse. I can remember 15, 20 years ago where I thought, this won't stay the same. People will become enlightened. People will become educated, and things won't go the way they're going. I can easily tell you right now, and this is my own personal, professional opinion, things have gotten worse since I did my first juvenile dependency case in 1989. They've gotten worse. So the other thing people think is that when they bring lawsuits like this, that will cause change. Well, based upon what I've seen, where lawsuits are brought and won by families and parents, it doesn't really make a change. You think that it should when the county and the states are paying out millions of dollars. The Los Angeles Times has a article every year when they find out how much the county of LA spends in lawsuits brought because CPS screwed up or the sheriff screwed up. Like, things will change. Things will get better because we don't want to be sued for millions of dollars anymore. But the reason why they don't change is because when people win these lawsuits, the perpetrators, the social workers, they don't pay. It's the county that pays. So it's almost like you don't have any accountability. And I've done a lot of CPS lawsuits, and it's like they don't give a rat's ass. They really don't, because nothing's going to ever happen to them. They're not going to lose their job. They're not going to have to pay any money. So what's stopping them from doing it again in the next case or in the next case?
Right.
And then what will happen is, you will sue them. Let me tell you what happened in a case where I represented a woman who was a legal guardian, and allegedly a social worker made sexual advances toward her in front of her mother, who was a retired CPS worker. And then when she didn't play ball, he detained the child. I went to court. I got the child back, and the case ended soon thereafter. And we ended up suing the social worker in the county. And you know what happened in that case? I thought that case was this big. My client settled for an amount I won't say the amount. It was six figures, but settled for an amount that I did not advise her to settle for. And the reason why she settled it is because the county and their lawyers they were just wearing her out. You know, when you get really good lawyers to defend these social workers, they play all the games. They use all the strategies, the tricks. And one of the strategies is make the plaintiff tired. That they're just sick of the lawsuit and they'll settle for pennies on the dollar. I've seen that happen many times. Many times. But I brought up to you, Nico, I would love to talk to you and your daughter at another time in the near future about bringing some type of legal action. Georgette doesn't know this, but we are starting a campaign to represent people that were in the foster care system and who suffered abuse.
Mm. Very good.
And not only do these kids suffer sexual abuse, but they suffer physical abuse.
Mm-hmm.
They suffer emotional abuse.
Yep.
I have a case right now, it recently closed, but mother got her kids back, her boys back towards the end of the case. And, everyone thought the kids were in this foster home and, just doing just fine. They get home and after the case is closed, they start telling their mother all of the things the foster father used to do to them. I was kind of shocked because they never mentioned it before. And these weren't little boys, they're like 10, 11, 12, something like that. But they never mentioned it. They never mentioned it to their mother, at least. Who knows if they ever told the social worker.
Davis, I'm going to have to comment on that one, if you don't mind, that is.
Go
the
ahead.
reason they don't say anything is because they're trained and coached not to talk. And oftentimes, kids that I spoke with that grew out of the system, they say they were told that if they say anything to anyone, they will never see their mom again. They use threat tactics to keep the children silent. So, yes, they will not just go on and just speak about it because they're scared. They're scared. They give them medication. They to keep them silent. They meditate them. The reason the child is behaving the way the child is behaving because you took the child away from the most important part of the child's life, especially when the mother is innocent or the father is innocent or both of them are innocent. You're stealing that child's life from him or her, but yet they medicate the children to keep them silent. And then the pharmaceutical companies are making money off of this shit. It's a whole win-win game around, the pharmaceutical company, the government, the state, the counties. I mean, everybody benefits. And the child is the one that suffers. So that's
I
just
have a,
my opinion.
I have a quick question for you, Mr. Davis.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole time that I was involved, I've not been able to get access to any part of the case file or anything. My attorney did ask for it at the hearing and everything, but so far I've not been able to get access to anything. And I was just wondering if the delivered service logs, the CPS case file, and the CPS court files, are those all the same thing?
They're supposed to be.
Like, could you request those together?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
But isn't the delivered service log a journal that the social workers write in, like kind of like a journal on every case that they handle? And
Yeah.
they're supposed to have that? Okay.
Yeah. The good thing about it is nowadays they're all computerized and all the copies are sent to Department of Health and Human Services, where they frequently audit counties and states. So you can get the delivered service logs that were originally submitted, and sometimes you might get a delivered service log that's been altered a little bit.
A
You know,
lot. Hmm.
so look, you can get a copy of that and took the kid's entire file from day one to when the child went home with you and the case was closed.
Hmm.
Now, do they want to give it to you? Probably not, because they don't want expose what happened with this child. All right. And can you imagine this story getting out, the way your child was treated in a system that's supposed to be protecting children? Can you imagine? They don't want to be sued. They don't want mud on their face. They don't want to give it to you. Now, you have a right to get it, and there's ways to get it. We can talk about that. But, you know, you're entitled to everything.
Yeah, I've been trying for quite some time and been having a very hard time.
Yeah, you actually have to do it exactly the right way. You have to dot your I's and cross your T's, or they're just going to ignore you and make excuses. But
Yeah,
if you
'cause
want it,
I don't live in California because I go in person.
oh, you don't have to go in person. I'll show you what to do when we talk, maybe perhaps later on this week, and how to get a copy of your file. Okay.
Okay.
Now, before we sign off for this evening, I have a question for you, Nico. I'm actively recruiting
Okay.
people to be hosts for the different shows that we have on our platforms. And it usually entails doing one or two 30-minute, 45-minute shows a week. Sometimes more. Sometimes you get people like Georgette and Cassandra, and they're on every other day. But it's up to you.
Wow. Mr. Davis, before you continue.
Let me mute her. Nico, would you be interested in doing that?
I would say yes. I just know I have two kids right now that are being tested for autism, and
Mm.
that kind of, I'm a single mom, so my I usually always do good when I have a schedule. So I would love to commit to something, but I don't want to commit 100% until we get her more settled.
Okay, understood. Well, keep in contact with me and Georgette and Cassandra. And then, of course, our producer, Grace, handles everything. So you may have received an email from Grace, but you can always, email her and let her know when you're ready. Um, the shows are on, theoretically, on 24/7, 365, right? So if you wanted to do a 10 p.m. show or a 12 midnight show, you could do it. Or if you wanted to do a 6 a.m. show. A few years ago, I used to do something called morning office hours. It was a Facebook show that started at 6 a.m. Pacific time. I don't know if you guys remember that, but yeah, I would only come on and, from like 15 minutes and answer questions that people had. And it had a big following. The only problem was it was 6 a.m., you know, every day. That got kind of tough. But
I really do want to get more into like advocacy and like try to make more states an option to get parental rights reinstated, and that's like that direction I would really like to take.
great. Great. You know what? We should probably do like a whole show, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes on the steps to take to get your parental rights reinstated. What do you think about that, Georgette?
I think that's a wonderful idea. I actually like I just love Nico already. I mean, I don't mind at all. At all.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I have to say, Georgette, like when I got my rights reinstated, that like when I talked to LJ and I called the office too afterwards, and just to say thank you. And like I have to say, like I definitely feel like pulled in your direction, that you have like something to teach me at some point. I don't know
Oh,
what it is, but
well, this was so sweet. I love you so much. Thank you so much, Nico. Thank you, baby.
Nico, I want to thank you for being on the show tonight. Cassandra, thank you very much. Miss G, thank you as always. Now, we're going to be on the show tomorrow night as well. So if anybody wants to join us on the live stream at 7 p.m., please email Miss G or email Grace at vincentwdavis.com. And Miss G is GAT at vincentwdavis.com. What's the A stand for, Georgia?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. But
What,
hey, Nico.
what's the A stand for, Georgette? Okay. Anyway, so we're moving on. Thank you again, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 7. Good night.
Good night.
Bye, Nico.